everyone, welcome back to Keto and Crime and Thought Crime. Today I'm going to review for you the limited Netflix series The Ripper. It was released December 16th, 2020. It's a 4-part limited series. We used to call those mini-series. That details the Yorkshire Ripper. And I've been told by people from my British viewers that I mispronounce Yorkshire all the time. I say Yorkshire when it's actually Yorkshire, so I'm going to try to say it correctly for you this time. But basically 13 women, the majority of them sex workers, that took place between 1975 and 1980 in the Yorkshire Manchester area of the United Kingdom. And a lot of parallels have been drawn between the Yorkshire Ripper and Jack the Ripper, because preyed on women and mostly sex workers, and for the longest time went unknown and unpunished. In fact, Jack the Ripper, we still don't know his identity, but we do know the identity of the Yorkshire Ripper, and he is Peter Sutcliffe, who died in November of 2020, so not long before this documentary came out. But he basically was arrested in 1980 and found guilty of murdering all 13 women and attempting to murder 7 more. He was sentenced to 20 concurrent life sentences and basically was never getting out of prison. And he preyed exclusively on women. His defense was that he was hearing the voice of God, and God was telling him to murder all sex workers because they were the scourge of society. And so he was on a mission to rid his local area of any sort of sex worker. Now, there's a lot of political, I'm not even going to get into that. I'll get into that when I cover the actual movie review. But it was one of the largest and most expensive manhunts in all of the United Kingdom. It involved not only Scotland Yard, but several local and county or regional law enforcement agencies who were absolutely stumped, especially since in a couple of the attempted murders, as well as one actual murder, did not involve a sex worker. It simply involved a woman that Sutcliffe probably suspected of being a sex worker. So you had all of these murders, boom, 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 that fit a pattern. And he murdered them exclusively with sharp objects. So you had all of these things that kind of fit a pattern, and then all of a sudden something that blew the pattern out. So they weren't exactly sure what happened, but he was finally arrested. Lots of criticism hurled at Scotland Yard and the local enforcement agencies because of mishandling. They actually got into a war in the press with Sutcliffe because he would leave clues and they would threaten him and basically tell him they were coming for him in local newspapers and radio. So it was drastically mishandled. And as a result, though, they did finally catch him, and he spent the majority of his sentence in Broadmoor Hospital for the criminally insane, but later on died at 74 in an actual prison, HM prison in Durham. So he's no more, thank goodness, but that is the gist. Now, if you want me to do an in-depth dive on the Yorkshire Ripper, in fact, I would love to do a video, Jack and the Yorkshire Ripper, as kind of two parallels, because as we know, we still don't know who Jack the Ripper was, and it was sort of mishandled by Scotland Yard there too. So I would love, if you want me to do kind of an in-depth episode on both of them, let me know down below. I'll be happy to do that. But now let's get into the Netflix limited series. I enjoyed it. I want to put that out there first. I think it's worth your time. If you are looking for something to binge watch in one day, one weekend, one night, this is it. Go ahead and do it. It's worth the 4.5 hours that you'll invest in it. It's incredibly well done with a lot of information that I wasn't aware of, and I read, up on all this weird stuff. It's done kind of as a percentage of each episode seems to be dedicated to one victim. And I think that's very, very good. They start with the first victim, they interview her son, they move on. It's essentially they go murder by murder, and they give you an in-depth analysis of what happened, where it happened, the extenuating circumstances of what happened. They really make these women, even though many of them were sex workers, very human. And they let you know the circumstances that led them into that sort of occupation, as well as the family left behind. And they interview family members, children of these women, as well as the local reaction. And it wasn't until, I think it was the fourth or fifth murder, that was not a sex worker. It was just a young woman, according to the police, a young woman. They even said this in the newspaper when they were talking to the Ripper, that she was not a sex worker. She was a woman from a very fine family that worked at a grocery, and you took her life. So she seems to be treated a little differently. They get to her, they interview her parents. It's an all-around sad situation. Now, it does jump around quite a bit. I mean, my wife watched it with me. She was a little disappointed in it. She said she was actually expecting, more of a docudrama. This is straight up documentary. It's not a docudrama. She said she was expecting, kind of like when we watch ID Discovery together, there to be a reenactment and kind of a piece that kind of shows you what happened. Well, that's not the case with this. If you're looking for like the Shanann Watts documentary that I recommended, if you're looking for, actual like reenactments or something like that, this is not the one for you. Whereas with the Shanann Watts one, the murder next door, you actually got to see texts and emails that were, up until this time unknown. So it was very interesting, and they weaved a narrative around what was happening. But this is not how this one moves. It is simply a factual retelling of what happened with no drama, no reenactment. It's just straight facts. It tells you woman A was murdered here. This is what he did to her. This is when her body was found. Here's why she was a sex worker. Here's an interview with her son. It's kind of like that. So in my wife's opinion, it was kind of boring in that regard. She said she was expecting more drama. Also, there's been quite a bit of controversy around the series. I've seen a lot of articles from websites like Mary Jane and Jezebel talking about how it shamed sex workers. Now, again, I have to get a little political here because there's no way around it, but I don't have a problem with sex workers. If you willingly enter the trade, do it safely and legally in the places that allow it legally, I don't have a problem with it. That's your body. I can't understand how people that might be pro-choice would also have a problem with this, because it's the same thing. It's your body. Do with it what you will, as long as you don't hurt anybody else. So that's my opinion. I think it should be legal. I'm libertarian coming out, because I don't think you should have that much personal control over somebody. If somebody's on a self-destructive course, that's their choice. As long as you enter that willingly, I understand that there's a huge risk there of trafficking and people being put into it illegally. I understand that. I don't want to see that happen. So I'm prefacing by saying I don't have a problem with sex workers as long as they do it legally and willingly. All right. So, yes, the interviews and the actual newspaper articles and the actual reports they pull from 1975 through 1980, and then after that into the trial, yes, they are very, very scathing when dealing with the women, especially the ones that were in that trade. They are not nice. But that's not the documentary's fault. These articles that I've heard are blaming the documentary. The documentary is just presenting facts. It's not presenting dramatization. It has no control over what was actually said and done in 1975 through 1980. That was a very different time. It's like watching All in the Family and getting mad at Norman Lear because he allowed a character like Archie Bunker to be in one of his shows. No, Archie Bunker was a product of his time. Just like the stuff I'm not saying that's right. If a show like that was made today, I would be a little more scrutinous of it. However, this documentary is just presenting the facts. So the attitude of the people that investigated these crimes were very negative towards some of the women. I admit that. They were. But those things were actually said. And the documentary is just presenting you those facts. So the documentary was not negative towards sex workers. So that was controversy number one. Other controversy was that I've read some reviews and seen some things that said it drew it out too long. And I can see how that can be an argument. But they covered the case very thoroughly. They showed you as much as they possibly could from the actual investigation and the trial. So to me, they did not drag it out. I mean, this went on over a period of about 7 years, if you include the investigation, the trial, the times the killing started. So to condense all of that into 4 hours, I think they did a good job. So bottom line, if you want a factual retelling of this story, if you enjoy what you watch here on YouTube as far as us true crimers retelling the story of a crime to you, if you enjoy that, you're going to enjoy this documentary because they do it with actual artifacts from what happened. That's the only difference. And interviews with people that were connected to the crimes in some way. So I give it 2 thumbs up. I enjoyed it. It's worth a weekend if you're going to be binging on a series or something anyway. It's a good one. And it's a short one, and you can actually do it in one day if you want. So that's my opinion on the Ripper. I think it's very good. Let me know down below if you would like me to do an in-depth on Jack and the Yorkshire Ripper to tell you the facts, the case behind, go through each, kind of do what the documentary did. If you want me to tell it my way, I'll be happy to do it. And also I would like to look at the parallels between Jack and this Ripper as well. But if you like that, let me know down below. Love to do it. And until next time, I'll be back really soon. Keto and Cry.